Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Yes, another loss that we get to dissect in its full glory over the next 30 to 35 minutes. But I'm not going to do it alone, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a couple of minutes. Welcome, everyone. I am Clay Emo, Canuck Clay, both here on YouTube and on Twitter, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Truly, I am, despite what we saw on the ice. Another loss for our beloved Vancouver Canucks. This one by the score of 5-2. Seems like we're losing a lot of games by that score this year, but hey, it seems like we're losing a lot of games. By the way, we're on a 56-point pace. 56 points. Not the 96 that we might need to make the playoffs. 56, but we'll get in all of that. So once again, welcome. I'm Clay Emo, Canuck Clay, here on YouTube and on Twitter. As we get going, I want to invite you to like this channel, this SDPN, the Steve Dangle Podcast Network channel right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel itself. Like this video. You're not liking the fact that the Canucks got blitzed once again, but you're liking the fact that we are here together and we're able to talk about it as a group and maybe try and make each other feel a little bit better. Also, liking the video obviously helps us out a lot. And if you're listening on the podcast network as well, please rate and review. We appreciate that as well. So lots to talk about. We talk about Bruce Boudreau's future, talk about what the Canucks have left in the tank for they still got one more game on the road before they come home. What kind of crowds are they going to be facing? All these type of things. But first, let me do my little ad read, and then let me bring on our special guest for tonight. Want to bet? You can do so at Sports Action Canada Sportsbook. Football continues. Basketball and hockey are well underway. You can bet pregame, live and play on one of our many prop bets. Made for Canadians, by Canadians, Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all that sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsaction.com/SDPN, Steve Dangle Podcast Network. That's sportsaction.com/SDPN. Ontario only, 19 and over only. Please play responsibly. Well, I don't know if the Canucks played responsibly, but I do know that the person I have coming in here is very responsible because he was here on time. He's ready to go. So let's bring him in right now. Please welcome my, looking so good, my friend, Parker Halliwell. Parker, welcome.
Hello. Good evening. Glad to be here after a good old-fashioned Vancouver Canucks loss.
Parker, before we break this down, as we like to do usually, tell everyone a bit about yourself, what you're doing on YouTube, what you're doing for the Canucks, and yeah, just a bit about yourself would be awesome.
My name is Parker. I go by Parker's Pucks here online. I make Vancouver Canucks videos for the last couple of years now. We do a podcast together called Canucks After Dark that you can find wherever you find your podcast, just like this one, by the way, that goes once a week. And then I do, my own stuff on my own channel, Parker's Pucks as well. If you're Vancouver Canucks inclined, it's a place for you to maybe check out.
Yes, I found Parker online about just over 2 years ago now. I was like, this guy's smart. This guy knows his stuff. This guy needs a way bigger following. And it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with his own good content. But his channel has grown quite a bit. And then we were able to partner starting, weird time to start. It was like in the middle of last year when the Canucks were just as bad as this year. I don't know, they're doing a bit better. But Parker, tell us, before we get to tonight's game, tell us a bit about what you do on your channel, some live streams and some reaction videos, some breakdowns. What do you do there?
Yeah, I do, some sort of post-game stuff similar to this. I do, sometimes I'll do some sort of film breakdown stuff like that, although that's really high effort, and sometimes I don't put the effort in. And other times just, reactions to breaking news, things along those lines, anything big happening around the NHL or with the Vancouver Canucks. I like to give my take on it. Apparently some people like to hear it. And yeah, we got a fun little thing going over there.
Awesome. Yes. And we join together every Monday night. Sometimes we have to move it depending if one of us is busy, but every Monday night we have an hour show ourselves called Canucks After Dark. It is dark outside, even on the Pacific Coast, but also dark is the Vancouver Canucks right now. So Parker, I have a few storylines I want to get to, but to me, what was the biggest storyline from this game? We'll talk about big picture overall, but to you, what did you see in tonight's game that in particular, maybe it's a repeat of something or something new, but what did you see in tonight's game?
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't anything new. It really feels like, it's the same old lack of urgency, lack of discipline. Discipline was a real issue tonight. The Canucks have been okay at staying out of the box. Their problem is that when they're in the box, they don't do anything shorthanded. They get throttled when they're on the penalty kill, and more of the same tonight. Even though power play, penalty kill wise, they basically break even against Boston tonight. But it really just felt like, you can look at the analytics and see, okay, things are pretty even at 5-on-5, but it just never felt that way throughout the game. It felt like the Canucks were the slower team. It felt like they were the second to get to every puck. It felt like it felt like Elias Pettersson and Bo Horvat were the only two people playing tonight, and everyone else was sort of standing by watching. And unfortunately, that's sort of been the way everything has been this season, with really those two players standing out as the only ones sort of having any action.
I'll add one more player to that, but I want to get your reaction to him. But before I do that, everyone, thank you for being here, watching Game Over Vancouver. By the way, if you're watching and it's easy for you to go on YouTube, or it's easy to go on Instagram or Snapchat, TikTok, whatever the cool people are doing these days, Facebook, share the video right now. Get more people in here. We have 80 of you in here, which is awesome. I think misery loves company. Parker and I always use that line, but it's true. Tell everyone that you are here watching Parker and Clay on Game Over Vancouver and breaking down this game. How about this one, Parker? Kyle Burroughs, I thought he was good, especially in the first half of the game. He blocked a couple shots. He tried to rock Pasternak, and then he, because of that instigator penalty that the Boston player took, that was the Canucks' first goal of the game, actually, Miller's power play. So I agree that Pettersson and Horvat were noticeable, but I think Kyle Burroughs was a nice, welcome insertion in the lineup, especially because it means Riley Steelman doesn't play.
Yeah, and it's something that we've been clamoring for as seemingly, it's one of those things where we can always say, we can make our own suggestions on who we think should be in the lineup, and whether that's Jack Rathbone or Kyle Burroughs, or you go back however many years to Frank Corrado or whoever you might want to put in the lineup. And most of the time, we're not the ones making decisions for a reason, right? These coaches sort of know what they're doing, but these are the ones that are in Kyle Burroughs in particular, more so than Jack Rathbone, because Jack Rathbone has shown to be pretty lackluster defensively, and I think that might be being nice. Kyle Burroughs has been, a really solid third pairing defenseman. He showed it last year, especially in the last 20 games or so. He's shown it in his limited spurts this year. It really is sort of unfathomable as to why he's not in the lineup more. And yeah, I think he was good tonight, for sure. And I didn't sort of put that in the repeat column because he just hasn't played enough for whatever reason.
Yeah. I agree with you. And maybe they wanted to see who they had in Riley Stillman after giving up, a second round draft pick to get him. Maybe they were worried about Kyle Burroughs playing, quote, on his offside, because he technically played on the left side tonight on to Myers' right. But I think we've seen that he's definitely more effective than Stillman. He doesn't make the same type of defensive errors, lapses in judgment. And as much as you and I both like Jack Rathbone, we got to admit that Rathbone has struggled a lot too in his last couple of appearances.
Yeah, and he was on his wrong side, but that doesn't really seem to stop him, right? I mean, you look at the analytics, right? While he's on the ice, Canucks controlled 62% of the shot attempts, 57% of expected goals at 5-on-5, right? Like he had a positive impact tonight. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who, analytically had a positive impact tonight, even maybe less so. But yeah, and every time we do see Kyle Burroughs, it's rare that he's the one that people are going after. You go on Twitter, it's a lot of Oliver Ekman-Larsson's on the timeline and not a lot of Kyle Burroughs when it comes to some of the vitriol that we see.
That's fair. Vitriol is a good way of putting it. And we're going to talk about some of that vitriol in a second. So you viewers know where we're going. Park and I, we're going to talk about what we observed about the game in the first segment. Then second segment, Parker and I want to talk a bit about just what do we expect going forward. One more road game, then coming home, Bruce Boudreau, Rutherford. And then our third segment, we will get into the chat section. And Parker, what's really funny is people are used to watching us together on Monday nights on our show. And there's quite a few comments in there saying, it's cool to see you guys here. It's odd to see you guys here, different logo, but we're just happy to bring a chance to bring our voices to the masses. And this is the only Canadian game that ended at this time. So we do have a big audience in here. So we thank all of you for indeed being here. Tell me about Kuzmenko, healthy scratch, were you surprised? And then tell me about the other Russian, Podkolzin, only playing 2 minutes.
As for Kuzmenko, I'm not really surprised. I think he has been very good, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy. He's got what, 6, 7 goals already this year.
Yeah.
He has been 7 goals at this point, 11 points, 15 games. Like, if someone goes and sees, okay, Andrei Kuzmenko's a healthy scratch, and they have been not following the Vancouver Canucks, they're just a casual hockey fan in some other market, and they say, oh yeah, Kuzmenko was that guy that the Oilers took to Joey, and he didn't want to stay there. And no, he's a Russian free agent. How's he doing? They go and they see, oh, he has 11 points in 15 games, and the Canucks have only won 4, and they're not playing him.
Yeah.
Seems odd. It is second game on a back-to-back. He has never played, this many games this frequently, right? The most games he's played in a season is 57. Maybe that's something to do with it. We've seen his ice time take a bit of a dip over the past little while. And for the Canucks, scoring hasn't been an issue until really the last 3 games, right? The Canucks have been able to score a bunch of goals all year, and they just allow more against. But 2 goals for in each of the last 3 games, and you have to wonder, especially this one where both those goals come on the power play, they get nothing done at 5-on-5 in those, whatever it was, like 38 minutes or whatever of 5-on-5 time tonight. A guy like Kuzmenko might help, but if he's nursing something, or I mean, I think he took a warm up, so that doesn't seem very likely. But if it's a rest and relaxation type of thing, I kind of get it. But I mean, the Canucks only play 2 games in the next 5 nights or so. The next week, basically, they only play 2 games before the following Monday. So lots of rest coming up for the Canucks. A guy like Kuzmenko, probably doesn't make the difference tonight, but it is weird to not see him at least get a shot to try to pad those stats a bit, maybe get the Canucks on the board a couple more times.
That's a great point, Parker, about the most he's ever played is, you're right, 50 games. So whether it is a bit of load management, although he's a younger guy, not youngest, but he's a younger guy. But I've been seeing some advanced stats and some analysis of his game, and obviously a lot of his goals that you mentioned he does a great job of setting himself up in the crease at the the side of the net and doing tap-ins, deflections, good skilled plays. But he's not the best play driver. Obviously, that's why you have Pettersson. He's not the guy who's going to bring the puck over the opposing blue line. And I think maybe the Canucks were looking to generate a little bit more off the rush, and he's a guy who really doesn't do it. And I thought Sheldon Dries, he's not a complete replacement, but I thought Dries was pretty good getting his first goal of the season. Podkolzin, on the other hand, he's been struggling a little bit. We both had high hopes for him at the start of the season, and we want him to do well on his cheap contract, but only gets to play 2 minutes. And then I don't know, maybe a brave decision, but not the smartest decision to fight. Is that the Boston guy's Bruins tough guy, or at least one of them? He looked tough.
He did look tough. He's got the last name Greer, which I think sort of has it has a toughness to it.
Yeah, yes.
Which I think might get in our heads a little bit, but not the smartest decision, but not a surprising one when we're thinking about a player who has been seeing his ice time decline and is at the point where he sees Kuzmenko get pulled out of the lineup tonight. What's to stop them from pulling him out of the lineup the next night to fit in a guy like Sheldon Dries when you can't trust JT Miller down the middle? So they got to pull someone out. Tonight it was Kuzmenko. No reason for the next night. It's going to be either, Höglander or Podkolzin, most likely. It's probably not going to be one of the newer guys like Studnicka. Joshua and Amon are doing well. So it seemed like, maybe Podkolzin is trying to fight for a spot in the lineup, trying to do sort of the classic, that's what hockey players are always told, right? Yeah. If you can't get a spot in the lineup, you gotta fight, or you gotta show some toughness and show a reason that you should be in the lineup. Don't know if that maybe had an impact on his decision-making. But a bad decision. Podkolzin's not a fighter. He's pretty small. You saw Greer sort of shy away from Luke Shen. That would have been a bit more of an even match. That probably would have gone the Canucks' way. And we saw Podkolzin play 2 minutes in the first 14 and a half minutes of play, right? He probably felt that. He probably thought, okay, I'm on track to play 8 minutes tonight. I got to do something to try to, get myself inserted into some ice time. Tie hockey game at that point, trying to spark the boys, do something. Just not the guy who should be having to do that.
It's going to be so interesting because Tanner Pearson's out for at least 4 to 6 weeks. Curtis Lazar is halfway through maybe his 4-week absence. So those are those are 2 forwards that you'd expect to be top 12 guys, obviously. So now if Podkolzin's out, you technically don't have any extra forwards with Sheldon Dries playing. So maybe Höglander, Kuzmenko gets back in for Podkolzin, and now you got to call up another player. So I don't know if you're thinking like a Will Lockwood if you need something like that, or do you take a flyer on a Baines or a Carlson to get some more offense into this lineup? What do you think? I guess it depends if Podkolzin's injured long term.
Yeah, if we have a guy like Podkolzin out, right? He's playing the right wing. He's a left shot. Russians, they do that. So he's the right winger. The Canucks depth, all of their depth seems to be in mediocre defensemen and not as much on the forward side. You'd like to see, a Lockwood or, like you said, a Carlson or someone along those lines. But I don't know if they're necessarily ready for the for the big time. I don't know if there's any. The Canucks play Tuesday next. So maybe someone hops on waivers tomorrow that Canucks can take a flyer on. I mean,
what are you doing Tuesday night, Parker? What are you doing Tuesday night?
I am unfortunately probably watching the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, I thought you could play for them or at least help a little bit.
I don't think that would be an upgrade, especially on forward. I mean, what are your options, right? Are you going to go with, Klimovich isn't even making the AHL roster at this point. You're looking at a Lockwood. Maybe is Phil DiGiuseppe healthy?
Mm-hmm.
He plays the left side though, but I wouldn't hate to see him get another spin.
Yep.
But your only real options if you need a right winger, I mean, you're looking mainly at a guy like Will Lockwood at this point.
Parker, what'd you think of this team, man? When I'm at work, I guess people know what I do, what we do. They're out always asking me, what's wrong with the Canucks? What's wrong with the Canucks? And I was at a social gathering last night. What's wrong with the Canucks? I want to say within this game, but they're so mentally fragile to me. Those penalties that they're taking, putting it over the glass, although Boston took one too, just careless tripping, hooking, penalties caused by not having confidence, not moving your feet, not battling. It's aggravating. You're just shooting yourself in the foot, and you're playing against the best team in the league. Like that's obviously not a recipe for success. Did that surprise you? Just how even on Boston was too. They had each team had 6 power plays, but I thought the Canucks there 3 or 4 of those they didn't need to take.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a frustration thing, right? Being tired doesn't really, they had 2 nights off before yesterday's game. The Bruins also on a back-to-back as well, so that's, that sort of takes that out of the equation.
Yep.
The Canucks were up against what is Boston, like the 5th best power play in the league coming out, or was that the Canucks? I don't know. Boston was up there though, right? You just look at the people Boston puts on the ice on the power play. That personnel unit, they're dangerous, and they're always going to be dangerous. You're not going to get away when you have is it worst or second worst? Has Anaheim overtaken them? Either way, one of the worst penalty kills in the NHL. You're not going to survive against a 13-2 team that has one of the best power plays in hockey if you take 6 penalties. Whether it's putting the puck over the glass, whether it's breaking your stick on a shot and thinking, well, I got to do something, and then using the bottom half of your stick to play the puck. Just mental lapses that are just, they're inexcusable, right? They're silly mistakes that you cannot take. And the Canucks have been taking them, and they take them all year. And you'd think when you have such a bad penalty kill, you try your hardest to avoid these things. But it's just like a lack of focus. It's a lack of speed. It's a lack of urgency. And it's just like panicking, like, I got to do something. And it's Tyler Myers throwing the stick in on Trent Frederick and spinning him down or whatever it might be, to really just throw away any chance that you might have of grinding out a win against a team that's this good.
And for those of you watching and you're wondering, why is Clay smiling? Like, isn't he a little bit upset about? Of course I'm upset. Parker and I, and many of you spend a lot of time, energy, and money. We invest that into the team, but we're not going to, why? I was trying not to make sure that I don't pout for half an hour. I'm giggling though, because you know how you said Greer just sounds like a tough guy's name? You know what else sounds like a tough guy's name? When you don't even have a first name, you just use initials. His name is AJ Greer. Like that to me, doesn't that kind of personify toughness?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a cool tough guy. AJ Greer.
Speaking of tough, let's talk about our D. To you, did Kyle Burrows do enough to warrant staying in ahead of Rathbone and Stillman? And what happens when Dermott ultimately comes back? What does your 6 blue liners look like?
Yeah, he absolutely has. Yeah. He is leagues ahead of Riley Stillman. This Riley Stillman experiment has been an absolute failure. Right when that Dickinson trade happened, we looked at it as like, well, it's a second round pick to get out of the cap, and maybe this Stillman guy will be a nice depth piece. He hasn't been. Yeah, he really has not warranted being in the lineup over Kyle Burrows, and I don't know why he has been so much. But you just look at ice time, right? Kyle Burrows played 18 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
The defense was split up pretty evenly, right? Quinn Hughes, the only defenseman over 20 minutes. Everyone else was sort of in the 17 to 19 minute range. Burrows has been very solid. When Dermott comes back, though, which we don't know when he's coming back at this point, right? It's a concussion, so it's one of those things that's always up in the air. But yeah, you think that they're gonna definitely try to slot him in, and it's in theory it's one of Burrows or Bear who would need to come out. And yeah, I guess I don't know if they move Burrows to number 7 and then start rotating them in and out. If maybe they're trying to ease Dermott back in, or maybe it's we're panicking, we need something to work, let's put Dermott in every game for 22 minutes a night and hope he can salvage something, which seems like a terrible position to have to be in.
I want Bear to do well. We all love his story. We love how tenacious he is. I haven't been fully impressed with him just yet. I know he was a couple things I want to say about the D, and I would love your opinion, Parker. Number one, I'm not blaming Bear for the loss at all, but I do know on that 4-4 goal, he kind of maybe he was tired, but he kind of made a horrible line change. Went to the bench at the wrong time. It was the far, and then it led to a 3-on-2. And Boston is every team against the Canucks so good at those cross ice passes, and I felt bad for Demko on a lot of these goals. So I haven't been impressed with Bear. And the other thing I was going to say is OEL and Myers together, they've been atrocious on this road trip. So they were split maybe to get some speed with them. So actually Bear did play with OEL, and then Myers got to play Burrows, and you don't break apart Hughes and Shen. So two things. What's your impression of Bear so far? And are you fine with OEL and Myers never playing together? No, I shouldn't say that, but them being split up as well.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same page on Bear. I look back at what he did in Edmonton, and he did show, flat. I mean, he was a top 4 defenseman there because he had to be, right? They were sort of in a similar situation to where the Canucks were supposed to be this year, right? Pretty thin on defense, but some offensive firepower, but they made it work a little bit better. As for OEL and Myers, man, Oliver Ekman-Larsson looks bad. He looks so like he cannot move his feet at all. There's that one play where the puck came back to the point, and I think Elias Pettersson was fully expecting him to pinch because he would have gotten there 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
And he backed off, right? And you give up possession, basically 2-on-1 the other way. It's poor decision making, but most of all, it's just lack of speed, right? Like you got to be able to move when you have a guy like David Pastrnak coming in on you, right? He's gonna just beat you, right? If I'm looking up and I'm seeing a guy who's 30% slower than me, my move, I'm not going to try to get through him. I'm just going to take it wide, and I'm going to get to the net before he is, 9 times out of 10. And, it's, teams are going to pick up on that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be looking at the film, and they're going to say, hey, this Ekman-Larsson guy, he's playing 20 minutes a night and he is slow, right? And he's out there with Tyler Myers, and they are both slow. You get past them and you've got all the time in the world. So yeah, as for them not playing together anymore, I mean, I don't know how you can, unless you're keeping one of them like, every time a puck comes close to the blue line, if you're backing one of them up to center ice so they don't get beat, but then you're giving up so much offensive potential that hindering yourself even more. That I don't see a world where you can put them together, but it's not like the Canucks have a ton of options either.
Great point. And then once Dermott comes back, at least it opens it up a little bit. You can put Dermott as high as a second pairing. So if you go, you could see something like Hughes and Shen, Dermott with Myers, and then OEL with with a Burrows on the right side, for instance. I'm sure I just missed someone there, but we'll see what happens. We will see what happens for sure. Last question about tonight's game, Park, and then we'll talk about bigger picture stuff. Your impressions on Demko tonight? We've talked about the forwards, we talked about the defensemen. How about the goaltender tonight?
Well, again, you look at the numbers and you go, okay, well, Demko allowed 4 goals on 31 shots again. Yeah. That's not great. I thought he was fine. And again, that's kind of the problem though, is he has been fine for the majority of the year. A couple of great saves, a couple of big saves, which he hasn't been giving the Canucks very much of. But yeah, again, not a world-beating effort from Thatcher Demko. One of his better games as of late. Yep. Not the reason they lost, which he really hasn't been many nights this year. It's just, again, we're not seeing those games where Demko stops 30 of 31 and wills the team to a win. And that's tough, right? When you're have 12 minutes of power play against you from one of the best power plays in the league.
Yeah.
Then sure, yeah, you can't put too much of that on Demko, right? But allowing, 2 5-on-5 goals on probably like 25, 20 shots or whatever that is, a fine effort. But again, still not that world beater that we really needed in the latter half of last year and that they got.
Don't you think, Parker, the Canucks must hold the league record or the league lead in allowing 2-on-1s, basically breakaways, because what starts as a 2-on-1, even before the puck even gets in their zone, you'll have the defenseman try and make a play on the boards, and then they simply get it through the defenseman. I could count on 2 or 3 of those, even when we were on the power play, that Demko came up big. So those goalies are not getting much support, are they?
Yeah, I hate their strategy on 2-on-1s.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that gets instilled at you at a low level of hockey, like Pee Wee House. If you're a defenseman, you have a 2-on-1 on you.
Yep.
Try to run some interference, but focus on the second guy, right?
Yep.
Let your goalie make the save.
Yeah.
And I don't want to harp on yesterday's game, but you have Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tyler Myers coming back on defense on a 2-on-2, and they both go to the same guy on the wall, and they leave a breakaway wide open, right?
Yeah.
And it happens so much where if I'm on a 2-on-1 and I'm a forward and I'm coming in on the rush and I got my guy beelining it to that, and the defenseman comes at me, let's say I have a 30% chance of getting it through to him.
Yep.
I love those odds
because
it's a 30% chance that my guy is 1-on-1 on the goalie, and he probably scores like 40% of the time there, right? We got good odds we're scoring here.
Yep.
And, I just hate the way that they run these. You got to trust your goalie, especially a goalie like Thatcher Demko, to be able to make a save on a guy who has a wrist shot from the hash marks or like from the top of the circle, right? That's a shot that's going to go in sometimes, but it's going to go in less than if that puck gets across, your goalie has to slide over, and now there's basically a breakaway or even just a quick one-timer. It's a dangerous way that they're playing, and they're too slow to recover if they do make a mistake.
And great point. And if you're Demko or Martin and you don't trust your defender to block that pass that you just talked about, then you're now cheating over to the other side, and you're making it even easier for the first guy to shoot and maybe find a hole now on your short side. It's just a recipe for disaster. So let's end off this first segment. I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about the good, not a lot, and the bad of today's game. If you are watching, you're still with us, thank you for being here. Why don't you type in the chat where you're watching from? I know many of you are from Vancouver. We recognize a lot of the names, but I also recognize a lot of the names from other Game Over shows. So why don't you type in the chat exactly where you're watching from as we get ready for our second segment. Make sure you subscribe to SDPN and make sure you like this video as well. Okay, Parker, they are now 1-3 on this road trip. They're a 56-point pace, as I mentioned off the top of the show. This feels a lot like when they came home last year, and they were actually winning a couple games, and then they had that debacle against Pittsburgh, jersey on the ice, fire Benning chance, and then we know what happened after that. Are we at that place yet, or is somehow Rutherford? All eyes were on the game yesterday. Rutherford was there, Alvin was there. I think Cami Granado was there. So all eyes were on that game. And then a back-to-back in Boston against the best team. Got one more against Buffalo. What can we expect? Either now to Buffalo or coming home to play LA on Friday? Do you expect anything to happen?
Not necessarily. And you said 56-point pace. That's actually higher than I thought. Just like guessing in my head, I would have said 40. And the way it has felt does not even feel like 56-point pace. But yeah, looking ahead, I mean, it's a Monday and a Tuesday. I don't see it. I think they got it. They clearly have to do something. But yeah, it is very eerily similar to last year, right? 8-15-2. The Canucks are right now 4-9-3.
Yes.
Is that a lower points percentage or about the same?
It's 11. 11 points out of 32. So that's why they're on pace for 56.
Yeah, and that's probably around the pace they were on last year when everything imploded, right? They're really just doing a speed run of what happened last year.
Yeah.
And last year we saw a change make a big difference. And it depends what that change is, right? Are you making a big trade, right? The Canucks haven't done that. They've made a handful of small trades that have technically impacted the lineup with Studnicka, with Bear, with Stillman, unfortunately. And it hasn't done anything. right? The ship has not turned around. So do they go big, right? Do they say, all right, we're going to ship off a big name and see if that.
I think Parker may have frozen. So I'm going to try and get him back in.
With Stillman.
So let me do this. Parker, not sure you can hear me on the stream. I think you guys can still hear me on the stream. Or maybe not. Let's see what happens. So I will try and get Parker back in here as we go. And hopefully you guys can still hear me. And yeah, let's start typing in your questions or your comments as you've been doing in the chat. I'm going to try and get Parker back in. And as we are going, because see that I think this team has gotten Parker so upset that he just kind of freezes sometimes when he talks about the game, which is fine. So once again, yes, the Canucks, they are playing in Buffalo on Tuesday to wrap up their 5-game road trip, a road trip that has seen them go 1-3, and they're going to come back actually all the way back to Vancouver, further under 500 than when they started. And that is not, of course, what we want to hear. That is not what we were planning for. And as many of you are saying, maybe this is simply the team that we have. So I am
recording in
Parker
progress.
can get back into our little meeting, and if not, I will wrap up the rest of the show without him. But hopefully he gets back, and hopefully he's listening to me stall to give him time to get back. But we'll see if he's able to.
Recording stopped.
He just texted me, much like the Canucks. Parker had a power outage, a brief power flicker at his place. So that's okay. Sometimes even someone as powerful as Parker. Oh, speak of the angel. Okay, hold on. Let me try. Give me 2 seconds. I have to. Maybe we can do this seamlessly. In 3, in 2, and 1. Oh no. Boom. You're back.
Yeah.
What happened?
Sorry about that. My power just flickered. Very odd. Everything shut down.
But you know what the beautiful thing is? I was getting all nervous because we've been talking so well, so long, that I got that big Zoom, because I'm cheap. I'm on the free Zoom. It said, your meeting will end in 10 minutes. But because of that restart, we can go even longer than 10 minutes now.
We saved it.
So what were we talking about?
I think we were talking about how the Canucks are probably not going to do anything in the next couple of days, but they need to do something soon if they're trying to salvage the season. But yeah, I was just trying to wrap up by saying it's too little too late. It feels like, right? Last year they were in this position. They couldn't make up for it in time, and they were on a world beater pace. What are the odds they pull something like that together again? Yeah. Very slim. I think it's, they're cooked, right? They're already 5 games below 500.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure you didn't see it because your power was out, but as I was hoping that you'd come back, I was basically saying, here was a chance to creep closer to 500, even up to 500. And now at 1-3, they've actually dropped further behind, which is, and remember, to make the playoffs, for anyone who still has those aspirations, you got to be 14 games over 500, not just at 500. This is rough, man.
Yeah, well, they got to win what? Let's say they got to win 19 more games than they lose for the rest of the year, at least in regulation, right? And there's only, 66 games left, 68, 64, 66?
Yep.
66 games left. So the Canucks have to win.
They got basically go 40, 20, and 6, basically, or something crazy like that.
Yeah. They have to win 40 more games this year, and they only have about 66 games to do it. I don't see it happening.
That is a sobering thought. You're right. They've played 16, and they have 11 points. Yeah, we just nailed it. And then if they want to get to 97, they have to go get their 86 points, 40, 20, and 6 in those 66 games. Man, when we say it like that, now I'm sad.
Why have hope? What's the point? Yeah, no, it's the same old story, right? The Canucks, shoot themselves in the foot, and then they're going to try to salvage it, and it will likely, again, all odds point to it being too little too late, because they are already, they're already running out of time. What are we? We're 20% of the way through the season as of tonight.
Yeah.
20% of the way through, and they have 11 points.
Yeah.
You're not getting anywhere from here.
I want to get there's 140 people in here, which is great. They must have heard that you were coming. So I want to get to a lot of their comments for our last segment. So I have one more question to you, big picture wise. If you had to nail one reason why, and I'm gonna help you, and I say you can only pick coach or players. It doesn't mean that that's what's gonna get fixed or remedied right away, but and I know the easy answer is, well, it's obviously a bit of both. You can only coach the players you're given, and they blah, blah, blah. What do you think? What's the issue here?
It's the players. And again, that nuanced answer is what I would like to take, because the players, react to how the coach coaches. But yeah, no, it's a complete failure on the defensive end, right? And it's not even just the defensemen, right? It's the forwards coming back. And a big part of that is, whenever JT Miller plays center, there's a big hole in the Canucks own zone that is not helped out by the goaltender not playing well and the defense not playing well. It's a failure at every level that is leading to too many goals against, whether it's the penalty kill not working, whether it's the defense being bad, whether it's the goaltending not being at the level that we're used to, and the forwards, not contributing well enough in their own zone. It's just a failure on every single component of the players that seemingly like only 3 or 4 players are exempt from. And for that to be the case, that is just strictly an indictment on the players as a whole.
Yeah, I can't. You know how every broadcast, no matter what network you're watching on, after a goal is scored, you can always count on the same 4 shots, right? They show the goal, they show the goal scorer. Sometimes they cut to the goalie. Then they always cut to the opposing team's coach, right? And then they cut to the goal scorer doing the flyby, exactly, past the bench. So we know the 4 shots they always go to. Man, looking at Boudreau, and I like him a lot. I really do, but I felt for him. Just he was at a loss. I don't know. You saw after each of the goals, he's either mumbling, he's probably swearing, he doesn't even bother trying to pep talk anymore. I just saw him like kind of looking up at the scoreboard or looking up the replay a couple times. It's rough.
Yeah, it's pure defeat, right?
Yeah,
I mean, what's he gonna do, right? What is he gonna say to the players that he hasn't tried to say after every game, after every practice, in every intermission, right? Like what he knows that what he says isn't going to turn this around, because it can't when the team is playing this way, right? He said it in his post game, I think it was yesterday, where he said, yeah, we have a 10-minute lull every game. Like, we just have 10 minutes where we don't try. And like, what is he supposed to do about that, right? He just stand there. He knows the camera's cutting to him, right? It does every time.
That's a good
He's
point.
gonna stand there and like kick the glass, punch the glass, punch a player in the head, like we've seen a couple times before. Not from him, but yeah. Like, what is he gonna do, right? It is just pure defeat, because the writing's on the wall, right? We know what's happening. We know he's not back next year. What we don't know is, does he make it the rest of this year? He doesn't know that yet. All he knows is his current paycheck will come until the end of the year, and then who knows? Where does he go from here? We'll have to see, but it's not going to be here.
Wonderfully said. I feel for him, and I think you nailed it. That's a great point. If we know the 4 shots that the network goes to, I'm sure he knows that he's on camera after every goal as well. So let's do this. We're going to head into our final segment now. The good thing is we don't have to cut it off in 5 minutes. We can go for about 10 or 12 more minutes. But this is what I'd like to do. Everyone in the chat, amazing discussion in there. There's 160 people in here, which is crazy. Again, Parker, I call it the Parker bump. Put in the chat so we kind of focus a little bit. I want to know, where do the Canucks go from here? And I admit, I can't say the T word. People know I can't say T-A-N-K in its full. But I see many people are saying that. Others are saying if I was Boudreau, I'd walk away before they could fire me. Do you start a true rebuild right now? And you can do that without acknowledging that you're T-ing, but you can still say, let's trade Horvat for assets. Let's trade Miller before his no trade. So we want to hear from you. And I'll highlight a few of them. I'll get Parker's reaction. Where do the Canucks indeed go from here? Let's start with what the Zedric said. There's this notion that the Canucks don't want to have to pay 3 coaches, i.e. this year is Green's last year on his contract. Boudreau, then you'd have to pay him out this year and then hire a 3rd coach. But I thought I saw Rick Dhaliwal or someone say on Twitter, Parker, that Rutherford said if it comes to that, that's not going to be an issue. They're not going to not fire Bruce and hire a new guy just so they don't have to pay 3 guys. Did you see that as well?
I did, and that was, I think, this morning,
Okay.
if anything, maybe last night. But he did say, and it's one of those things where, Dhaliwal can be sort of the mouthpiece for whether it's management or agents or things along those lines, right? He has good relationships with them, so if they want to put a statement out, he's a guy that he'd be like, I talked to him and this is what he said. There's a couple flaws here. One is we have heard this from every single general manager in Canucks history at the time that they were the general manager.
Yep.
They have all said, I have full autonomy, XYZ. If I need to trade a player, I need to fire a coach, whatever, I can do it. And then we always hear after the fact, well, they didn't really have autonomy, right? There was some puppeteering going on from up above. However, I don't feel like Jim Rutherford, of all people, takes this job if he doesn't get the promise of full autonomy, right? That seems weird to me.
Especially at his age.
Yeah, right? Like, I feel like he doesn't need this job, right? If anything, right? He doesn't need the money, right? I don't imagine. So that part is weird to me. The whole paying 3 coaches thing is also weird to me because it's a few $1 million and that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But the player payrolls, $84 million or whatever the Canucks are over this year, right? With all their money in LTIR and everything, right? They're technically their projected cap hit is $88 million per cap friendly right now. So, they're paying a lot of money. Right? They have a lot of money. I guess billionaires don't become billionaires by throwing money around, but they have lots of money, right? They can afford to pay a guy, they can afford to take a $2 million hit for a year. They paid Louis Eriksson $36 million US dollars. They can afford to pay a good coach. So I hate the idea that that's where the line gets drawn of, we'll pay to the cap every year to make this team as good as possible, even if bad decisions are made.
Yeah.
This is where we draw the line on this $2 million.
Well, Irwin has a really good suggestion, Parker. He says, why doesn't Rutherford step in as the interim coach? Then he just gets his president's salary and you're not paying a third coach.
Well, if I'm being asked to do that, I am asking for some extra salary, some danger pay if I'm Jim Rutherford for some pucks flying that way, potentially. Yeah, I mean, that is another option, right? Yeah. They could go the interim route, right? They could push up a guy like Mike Yeo, which I think would be terrible, but those are options that they have unless they think they need a brand new voice for the rest of this season. But again, they're so far behind the 8 ball that maybe it isn't worth those couple $1 million, right? To make to try to salvage the season because in all odds, it's not going to happen.
Good point. Joseph is saying what I think a lot of people are thinking, and he says it quite articulately. He says, retool, sell Horvat while value is high, trade Miller before his no trade kicks in, and get a top pick and improve the D in the offseason. 5 things that sound all good, all put together. Do you think they could entertain any of those, especially the trading Horvat or the trading Miller?
I don't think they could yet.
Okay.
I think we need to be a lot closer to the trade deadline. If this team is, let's say, and they're on track for it, let's say they're 8 games below 500 a week or 2 before the trade deadline, right? And we're talking there's 30 games left in the season. They'd literally have to win out to make the playoffs, right? Like when their odds get like below 10%, and let's just, maybe Horvat's value is still really high, right? I mean, at that point, he could have reasonably, with, 60 games into the season or 50 games into the season, he could have like 26 goals at that point and have a lot of value. I mean, what other choice do you have?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Your cupboards are empty, right? You see a guy like Danila Klimovich not getting ice time in Abbotsford. Your best prospect is a guy who no one had heard of until the day before the draft in Lekari Mackey, right? The cupboards are empty. Yeah. They don't have a lot of draft picks. They're capped out. Like this was supposed to be the team that makes the playoffs. Then you can incrementally build off that to be a contender. Yeah. Well, that didn't happen, right? So something big has to change because otherwise you're just going to have another 5 years of this before anything meaningful happens when you get those cupboards restocked. Because this is the team that the Canucks have. So they're going to have to do something. I just don't think they do it yet. I think they wait until February to do something huge like that.
Well, good answer, Parker. And obviously you're focusing on the players on the ice. Some people in the chat are saying maybe when they talk about coach, it's not necessarily Boudreaux. Not everyone is sold, and you kind of hinted at the assistant coaches. So you had Trent Call that came up from Utica/Abbotsford, and he's running the D and the penalty kill. You have Jason King, who's been here for a while, running the offense and the power play. And then you have Mike Yeo coming over, and he's kind of, I guess, doing everything with Boudreaux. So when you look at Yeo, Cullen, King, maybe that's not the most confidence-inducing trio working with Boudreaux. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair. Yeah. We see the worst penalty kill in the league night in, night out. The defense isn't playing great, but they're not great, and it really is an effort level all around that seems to be lacking. So the thing is, a couple of those guys just got these new roles, right? Yeah. Mike Yeo is just got here. I don't know what his contract looks like, right? Are they going to, maybe he's getting paid for the next 3 years and probably a much lower salary than the head coach, but still, right? It adds up. And to do that across the board, I don't see it, especially because what are you going to do? Are you going to go bring in like 3 new assistant coaches on contracts that end at the end of this year? Is that going to be great for their resume to have been a part of this Canucks team, right? They're going to have their name associated with this group on their resume for their next job they're looking for. It seems like a bit of a tough sell.
Right. Okay, I got 2 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go, Parker, and then we'll wrap this up. One of them is a practical, strategic one. How is it that our power play is pretty good, 5th in the league, and again 2 out of 6, and our penalty kill is so atrocious? Is it is it coaching? Is it personnel? Is it systems? Is it will to win? Is it skill? What is it in your eyes?
So I think the power play is very good because of personnel, and I don't think it's very systemic. They play a very predictable, very stationary style on the power play that really has 3 triggers, right? Elias Pettersson on one side, JT Miller skating downhill on the other side, or a quick pass to Horvat in the middle. It's predictable, but there's 3 options in there, and they all have good shots, and it works enough. I think that's the personnel being great. The penalty kill, I think, is quite systemic, because what we see is no matter who they put there, whether it's Pettersson and Horvat, or whether it's, some worse defenders like
Mikheyev, Sednika, all those guys. Yep.
Yeah, right. No matter who you put in, the Canucks are still, going at a 60 to 65% clip night in, night out, right? Tonight, they go 4 for 6 on the penalty kill. And you look at the guys on the penalty kill, right? Elias Pettersson played 4 minutes of PK time tonight. Horvat played 4 minutes. Mikheyev played 4 minutes. JT Miller only played 1.5 minutes on the PK. It doesn't matter who's out there. They still get shelled. Yeah. Right. And to me, they just don't move.
Yep.
They give so much time, and they're not in a box, right? The box is sort of the classic, right? Yep. You got one guy on one D-man, one guy on the other D-man, and then you sort of shift over, and then same with, you got one defender that goes to the corner, the other defender that goes to the other corner, then you shift who's in front of the net, and you can bring a guy down if need be, right? That's the box. The Canucks do this weird sort of like 1-1-2.
It's like a rhombus.
And then both of the ones end up on top of each other at the top of the slot, and both defensemen are wide open, and they can just pass it around as much as they want until they finally find an open seam where it's just a shot that seems to beat our goalies most of the time. And there's no pressure. They can take their full 2 minutes. They're going to get a few shots. It's not going to get cleared probably. I really think it's a system problem. I think they need to just be more aggressive, because it looks exactly the same as it did last year, and it's the exact same structure as last year, but the people they're putting on the ice is changing.
I agree with you. And I think Horvat, Miller, Petey, Mikheyev, Sednika, they're all smart. Pearson, they're all smart players, but it's something you touched on, not only not aggressive enough, but I don't think their sticks are active enough, because so many times we see a cross seam pass from one flank to the other, or as you saw Bergeron's goal, an easy entry pass, and Bergeron, he's so good, but that tip over Demko's shoulder. So they're not getting beat on point shots. They're not even getting beat down low. They're getting beat on cross seam passes. So yes, great point about
And how many times have we looked at JT Miller try that cross seam pass to Pettersson and it gets broken up, right? That is what those active sticks can do, right? Quickly shifting what side your stick is on, right? Moving around. Extending, retracting, right? Make it so they have to guess on what the way through is going to be, and half the time it won't work. and then you clear down the ice and you kill 30 seconds off. But yeah, it's so stationary, it's so inactive, and it's just so passive. And that's really the problem with the Canucks as a whole, is they just feel too passive and too lazy as a whole.
Sure. Excellent, Parker. Last question, quick one. Do you think Horvat, if you were Horvat, do you think Horvat actually wants to stay here?
Would you?
Nope.
Yeah, neither would I.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah, you're the leader of this team, and the fan base loves you for the most part. But he's going to be 28 next year. His birthday's April 5th, so he'll be 28 by the end of the season. He's going to be signing probably a 6 or 7 year deal that takes him to when he's 34.
Yeah.
Right. Is basically, he'll turn 34 at the end of his next contract. It's a 6 year. Yeah. Would you want to be on a team that you've made the playoffs twice, and one of those times was kind of lucky in his first year under Willie D, and
sure,
when they sort of snuck in, someone got 101 points and then did absolutely nothing in the playoffs, and then they had that one bubble run, completely helped out by your goaltender going absolutely crazy and putting up a 975 in one series. Like that's something that, if you want to be a contender, you can probably take $1 million a year pay cut. You can still make whatever it is, $50 million on your next contract. And you can go somewhere that's cheaper to live and maybe more competitive, right? And sort of balance that out. And it'll probably be a lot more fun because, these players, you grow up and you're hoping to compete for a Stanley Cup. You're hoping to win a Stanley Cup. You're shooting pucks in the driveway, pretending it's the Stanley Cup winning goal. And he hasn't been anywhere close to that. Yeah. Not even, and there's no seemingly easy way out of this. Right. I would have no desire to stay in a situation like this.
Mm-hmm. I agree with every single thing you just said, Parker. And I'll add one more thing. This offseason, he basically saw himself leapfrogged in terms of priority. Here, the whole thought was, sign Horvat and we'll see what we do with Miller. Yep. And then suddenly August, it gets announced that Miller signs a new 8-year contract or whatever, 7-year contract. And he's like, well, what about me? Do we even have no? So it'll be fascinating to track. I know we talk about it all the time on our show as well. So we'll just kind of see what happens as the Canucks sadly continue to lose. So Parker, I'm going to let you go, and then I will do the wrap up without you, so you don't have to wait around for it. But I want to thank you. Obviously, a lot of people want to hear what you had to say. We had a good crowd out tonight, despite the loss. And I know you and I have our show tomorrow night. But one last time, can you let everyone know where they can follow and consume your content?
For sure. Thank you very much for having me. Of course. You can find me on YouTube at Parker's Pucks. You can find me on Twitter at Parker's Pucks on YouTube. I do some post-game stuff, some film breakdowns when I'm not super lazy, like I said before. And then, of course, Clay and I do our show, Canucks After Dark, every Monday night. You can find it by searching Canucks After Dark, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. And we'll be there tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Pacific, just sometimes every Monday.
And lastly, thank you for sacrificing your own show. Are you going to do your own show now as soon as you get off? No,
this was enough. They lost. I don't need to talk anymore about this team.
I think we kind of dissected it pretty good. All right, man. Thanks a lot. I will wrap up. I'll let you go, and I will see you tomorrow night. Thanks again, Parker.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Well, there he was. There was Parker Hollowell of Parker's Pucks. Obviously, a very, very knowledgeable guy. I love working with him, and I was very grateful that he, instead of doing his own show tonight, he agreed to come on this one, and I think we're all grateful for that. So I'm sorry that I didn't get to as many comments as I wanted to in the chat section today, because I wanted to milk all of Parker's knowledge, but there's certainly I've been reading them as we go while trying to, it's kind of tricky. You're trying to pay attention to your guests. Actually, technically, I'm looking at my camera, even though my guest is down there, and then I have your chat here. But we appreciate you so much. All of us here across the Steve Dangle Podcast Network, we appreciate that you are so interested and invested in all of these shows. So once again, thank you for being here. I'm going to take a bit I don't have Tuesday because that's my bowling night. And I don't have Friday or Monday because I'm at the game. So I think the next time you see me will be sometime next week. But of course, the week after, I should say. But of course, with Kaya May and with Sam, you are certainly in very, very good hands. So once again, I want to thank Parker for joining us. I want to thank all of you for spending some time on a Sunday with us here watching Game Over Vancouver. So before you go on your way out, make sure you subscribe to SDPN right here. Make sure you like the video, and make sure if you're listening the next day on a podcast platform, make sure you rate and review as well. And while you're doing all that stuff, I'd be fine if you followed me as well, Canuck Clay, both right here on YouTube and right as well on Twitter. So where do the Canucks go from here? Well, they have one night to kind of, well, 2 nights, but I'm not sure if they're going to practice tomorrow. It seems like the type, after playing back to back, they'll probably take a day off, and then they will play their final game of their road trip this Tuesday in Buffalo before they come home. So I'm going to wrap up with a bad joke, as I like to do on these streams. So, and this one's pretty bad, I must say. So as always, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of the limited time on your weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. And I know a guy, one of my buddies, actually went on a date last night with a girl from the zoo. I heard it was great. She's a keeper. Zookeeper. Take care, and go Canucks go. Good night, everyone.
Game over! Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.